Welcome back to session 2 of Slow and Sweet, our nice and heavy yin series. And today we will be exploring some shapes for our hips and our lower back, ultimately to relieve some of that tension that so many of us carry. And our first shape today will be a reclined and supported cobbler's pose or butterfly pose. So as it was last week, again this week and in every session following this series, you will need a few more blankets than usual. I actually have 3 blankets here today. I laid one down across my mat because comfort and just pure enjoyment. So that is optional. If you want to do that, you can. If you don't want it, you don't have to have it. And then a bolster and some blocks as well. So for our first shape, I have one of my blankets here folded up into just a nice square. And I'm gonna lay that down on my mat. And then I'm gonna have my blocks right next to the blanket. So we'll come and we'll sit on our blanket so that our glutes are supported and as well as our lower back. And we will be reclining. And so if lying down on your back, especially in this open butterfly pose, is just not welcome to your body today for any reason whatsoever, you might explore this shape at the wall or with a blanket. So you could take another blanket, and I will show you the shape from this reclined position first. So I'll just have my blanket here to the side for the moment so that you can see what I'm doing. And so you can recline back. And here you can see that my glutes and my lower back are supported by this blanket. And if this blanket underneath you, which really only provides like an inch of lift, is uncomfortable for any reason, you can forego it. You can just remove it out from underneath you. You don't have to have it there if it's just not working out today. That's totally okay. And so with the knees and the feet together, you can allow them to then separate and land right on your blocks. And so as we settle into this shape, we'll be here for a little while. The supported and reclined shape. You have a couple options. Option 1 is to enter into it just like this. Option 2 is to choose the reclined version, but this time maybe you have a blanket draped over your lower body to provide a little bit of covering and safety. Option 3, if lying down on your back in this shape absolutely is just not welcome to your body today, you could move so that your back is just against the wall, just for support so that you don't have to totally hold yourself up, because this is a nice and juicy yin series. So you could bring the soles of your feet together here with your back against the wall. And then same thing, you could use your blocks to support your knees. Because even though we do want to sink into the connective tissue and find a sensation of opening, or however you would describe that for yourself, we don't necessarily want to shock the body. And so that is why we use these props. And our body is consistently looking for ways to support itself and to ground. And so the blocks are one way you can do that. And then, as always, you can drape the blanket across the lap and come into the shape this way. So you choose what is going to feel welcome to your body. And then just do that. And if you're not sure what feels welcome or what's going to feel supportive in a way that it allows you to rest, you could go through a few of those options, taking your time and then deciding which one you prefer. Because your body is different than my body, and our bodies change daily depending on activity or lack of activity or emotional state or nervous system state. So there is no right or wrong in whatever you choose. So as you settle in, taking your time to adjust and fidget and really just scooch into that perfect spot for your body. And then when you get there, I welcome you to just shift your focus from being in the pose or making the pose happen to simply just resting in it. You might shift your attention to your breath. Just allowing your natural rhythm to take over. You don't have to change the way that you're breathing, and you don't have to breathe in a particular way. However your breath naturally moves is all that we need to allow to happen here. If you want to explore the Ujjayi breath that we explored in the first session of this series, you might implement that at any point during practice today, or the whole practice if it feels really welcome. But otherwise, your natural breath is welcome. You don't have to do anything extra unless you want to. And we'll be here in this reclined butterfly pose for the next 8 rounds of breath. Just allowing the body to settle and arrive in your practice. You might take a moment to just scan through your body, noticing any area that might be clenching or tightening. Maybe it's your jaw, maybe it's your shoulders, or perhaps somewhere in the legs. And if so, that's okay. And if at any point you want to invite your body to release some of that effort, you could try that. And it might be that the body just takes its time. Perhaps it doesn't happen in this first shape, but maybe in a couple shapes the body will start to trust that it's okay to let go for a little while. And we can be patient with the body. And as we finish up that 8th round of breath, invite you to just allow your arms to float up above the head. And back to the floor behind you. Resting on the floor, just allowing a gentle stretch through your upper body for the next 5 breaths. Noticing how it feels to have this extension if you chose to take it. Last breath here. And then, if you are ready to move on to the next shape, because as always, you are welcome to take your time in every single shape, in every single breath. And so if there's ever a time that you want to stay longer in a pose or leave the pose sooner, you always have that choice. So if you are ready to leave this pose, you might begin to allow your hands to reach down toward your legs, the outside of your legs, and just gently draw the legs back together. And you might allow the feet to separate as the knees fall in toward one another, and just take a little rest. There is a Spanish proverb that I've been thinking about recently, and it is, "How sweet it is to do nothing and then rest afterward." How sweet it is to do nothing and then rest afterward. Option 2, draw the knees in toward your chest, perhaps holding your knees in with your hands, just allowing this curling in motion. Perhaps even rocking from side to side if it feels welcome. Giving the lower back a little massage. One more breath, whatever expression you're in. And then if you're ready to move on, you might plant your feet on the floor and just lift the hips up so you can move your blanket out from underneath you, if you had one there, and just set it to the side. And you might extend your legs out. And with an inhale, option to reach your arms up overhead and just stretch through the whole body, allowing your toes, your ankles, your arms, your fingers, anything and everything to just stretch. And then when you feel done, you can just soften into the earth. Just pause in here for a moment, allowing the body to be as heavy as it wants to be. And if you'd like, you could grab opposite elbows and continue to allow the arms to rest on the floor. If grabbing opposite elbows does not feel welcome to your body, a second option would be to simply grab onto your left wrist with your right hand. And then same thing here, just allowing the arms to rest on the earth. And your right leg, right foot could begin to, send on over to the right. Your right leg might even move off of your mat. And then followed by the left leg. Option 1 is to place your left ankle next to your right ankle. The second option is to hook your left ankle off top of your mat. And if you're ready, you could begin to draw your torso and your arms over to the right. And you might need to adjust a little bit. And with your arms over to the right and your legs over to the right, you can kind of check in, noticing how you're feeling. And this is like a big banana shape or like a big C shape with lots of opening on the left side of the body. And if this feels really big, like with really big sensations, and perhaps is a bit more than what the body is ready to do at this point in class, one option would be to simply allow your legs to go back to neutral and just keep your upper body leaning on over to the side. So there is no right or wrong. It is completely whatever feels appropriate in your body for this moment. And so once you arrive into the version of this shape that you prefer, maybe even trying a couple of the options to figure out, what do I want today? What do I need? And then might you allow your body to return to that heaviness, to return to the sweetness of doing nothing. As we explore this shape for the next 8 to 10 rounds of breath. So often, many of us have received the message that we have to do something in order to obtain or earn rest. And that if we rest without having done enough first, then there is guilt that might be attached to that, or shame, or a sense of unworthiness, perhaps. And so I am here to send you an invitation to remind yourself that, first of all, I don't have to do anything to earn rest. And second of all, because of the nature of our lives, we've already done plenty. And even if it feels like you haven't done enough, just revert back to that first point, that you don't have to do anything to earn or obtain rest. It is a natural right. It is a necessity of the body, a necessity of the heart, and the mind, and the soul. And we don't need justification to sink into the heaviness that our body needs, that our minds need. And so after your 8th or 10th breath, if you're ready to switch sides, you might simply start by just allowing the top half of your body to return back to neutral, followed by the bottom half of your body. And if it feels like your hips or your lower back are a little tweaked, you might like to adjust your hips and maybe even pull your knees in toward the chest for just a moment, kind of resetting. And then you could return back to extending the legs out when you feel ready. And so you could, if you have grabbed opposite elbows, you might even change the cross of what the elbows were previously. And if you don't remember which way it was previously, that's okay. It doesn't really matter. It's just an option. And then likewise, if you had grabbed onto one of your wrists, you could switch by allowing your left hand to grab onto your right hand. There we go. And so you might start by allowing your left leg to just reach on out over toward the left, maybe even leaving your mat, and that's okay. Followed by the right foot. Maybe the legs just rest parallel to one another, or maybe you prefer to hook the right ankle on top of the left ankle. And then, if and when you're ready to, you could allow your torso, the top half of your body and your arms to curve on over to the left, creating your banana. And again, if this feels like it's a bit too intense for what your body is needing today, you could always allow the legs to stay neutral at center and allow the top half of your body to find the stretch. And then once you arrive in what works for you, I invite you to scan through your body and find the areas that are still exerting effort, as in muscle activation or a sense of tightening or tensing to hold you in place. And if you find any areas that are doing that, you might send a breath. So what that could look like is you could imagine your inhale traveling into that muscle group that might still be tightening, breathing into it, sending it some fresh energy, and then with your exhale, allowing the muscles to soften. As we'll be here for the next 8 to 10 breaths. You might feel your body continuing to grow heavier and heavier. Perhaps continuing to watch or feel the flow of your breath moving in and out. Or if you prefer, you might simply just allow your mind to rest. As we finish up these last couple rounds of breath here. And if you feel complete, you might bring your body back to center, perhaps starting with the top and then moving to the legs. And taking a moment, we don't need to rush off, we can just settle in. Maybe even planting your feet on the floor, if that feels relieving to your lower back. And you might observe any differences in your shoulders or your side body around your ribs, noticing any differences that have taken place. And if you're ready to move on to the next shape, you could roll on over to one side and slowly press yourself up, using your hands to press away from the floor. And we will go ahead and grab the blanket that the 1-incher, if you will, that we had underneath us at the start of class. And if you want, you could bring that back now and sit on it as we prepare for a forward fold. So grabbing your blocks, and this is a shape that we did in our last session, so it'll seem familiar to you. And there's a couple ways you can come into it. If you remember from last session, we have our bolster, we have our blocks, and the only difference this time is that we have the blanket underneath us, or it's optional, rather. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. So option 1 is to take your blocks, and if you want to forego the bolster, you can take your blocks and kind of stack them in front of you. You could stack them really high, you could stack one high and then one medium. That's kind of where I like to be, but everybody's different. And so from here, and I'll show you the second option here in a moment. From here, you can allow yourself from this seated shape to just begin to draw yourself forward. And you might need to adjust your props, maybe move them farther away or closer. And as you come down to bring your forehead to rest, observe any areas that feel the need to pull or push. And can we let go of any extra effort? And the second option is to place your bolster on top of your blocks. I usually like to have one block at medium, the one that's closest to me, and one block at the tallest height. And then you could rest your bolster on top if you prefer to come down this way. If the bolster feels like it's really far away, you can grab your blanket and fold that up so that it will catch your forehead when you come forward. So there's all kinds of different ways that you can adjust this shape. And really that's what it is. It is adjusting it to your body, because as we've talked about in previous sessions, our bodies are not meant to fit in the shape per se. The shape is meant to fit our bodies. So that means you have lots of creative freedom, lots of creative licensing. And so it might take a moment to adjust your props and decide what feels best to me. And when you do arrive, we'll be here for at least 10 rounds of breath, 10 to 12. So you can really take your time sinking in. There is a sweetness to doing nothing. There is a sweetness in allowing yourself time and space to simply be, without an agenda, without a list, without shoulds or should nots. Let this be a moment of sweetness, of doing nothing. Knowing that you can completely collapse here, completely let go. The props are there to support you, to hold you. This class is a container to also hold you. If at any time your mind wanders and becomes agitated by that wandering, you can simply bring your awareness back into your breath. Either your natural breath or exploring the Ujjayi breath, the soft activation of the throat muscles as you breathe out. As we start to take our last 3 or so rounds of breath, and you can continue in this shape if it is still feeding you, still serving you. And if you're ready to leave, you could bring your hands to the floor or your props and use your hands to slowly press away. Take your time coming up. And when you arrive at the top, you can just take a moment. We don't have to rush off from one pose to the next. We can just take our time here. If it feels welcome to move into the shoulders or the neck, you might explore that now. In any way that feels right to you. And for our next shape, you can set your blocks off to the side and grabbing your bolster and placing it behind you. I'm going to have to move down a little bit. So your bolster can lay down behind you long ways. And it doesn't have to be right up on you. In fact, we want a little bit of space. And as we just took our spine all the way forward, we can now take our spine in the opposite direction. And so if you want, you can plant your feet on the floor, take your hands back behind you for some stability, and allow your back to reach down and land on your bolster. Now, you have a couple options. One, you can allow your feet to continue resting on the floor here, especially if your lower back has any tightening or tension or pinching. Definitely plant your feet on the floor if it helps. And if you would like a little bit of lengthening through the front of your hips, you might extend your legs out, just resting them on the floor. As we take some time in this reclined fish pose, and as always, if it feels safer, if it feels welcome to drape a blanket over your body, or maybe just for comfort or for warmth, there's always an option to just drape the blanket over your lap, over your legs, or your whole body. And we'll settle in here for another 10 rounds of breath. If it feels welcome, you might observe the breath moving into the body, perhaps traveling through your nose, into your nasal passageways, down your throat, and into your lungs. You might even feel that as your lungs inflate, your torso responding. So the rest of your body moving in tandem with your breath. Maybe your stomach moves. Maybe your ribs move. Maybe your chest moves. So as we're here in this very heart-opening shape, you might simply just allow your breath to move through your heart space, through the whole front of your body, in a way that is natural to you. Take another 3 or so rounds of breath. And after your 3rd round of breath, if your legs are extended out, you might draw them in and just rest your feet on the floor here. And 2 options. So first option is to leave the bolster where it is, and you could take your right foot and cross it over your left knee, coming into a reclined pigeon pose this way. And notice that the closer that your left foot, the foot that is still connected to the ground, the closer it is to your body, the more intense this shape is going to feel. So if you want to decrease some of that intensity, you can just scoot your left foot away and notice how that might change the shape. A second option is to completely remove the bolster from back behind you and return back to this reclined shape with our reclined pigeon pose. So our right foot can cross over the left knee. And you have the choice of moving the bolster out of the way or leaving the bolster there. There is no right or wrong choice. It's simply what your body needs today. And then you can adjust and wiggle and fidget as much as needed until you find the spot where you want to be. And then we'll be here for about 7 to 8 rounds of breath. Or however long you want to be here. Last couple rounds of breath. If you are ready to switch sides, you could take your right leg and maybe give it a stretch, perhaps rolling through the right ankle if you'd like, and then planting it right back down on the floor. And then in your own timing, you could take your left foot if you want, cross it over your right knee. And again, noticing that the closer your grounded foot, so your right foot in this case, the closer that is to your body, the more intense the shape will be. The further away it is from your body, the more space you're going to have. So you can decide and adjust for yourself where you want to be, knowing that when you make decisions for yourself in these classes, your choices are absolutely celebrated. Your choices are honored. Your choices are trusted because you know your body best. You are the only one who is inside of your body, who can feel the sensations in your body. And so you can choose what you want. We'll take another 3 rounds of breath or so here. And with your last breath, or when you decide you're complete, you could remove your left leg, give it a stretch if you want, and then we'll begin to bring our hands to the floor and slowly press ourselves up. Take your time. There's no rush. And then when you arrive at the top, you can take a moment And we will move the extra blanket that's underneath us, the one that's folded. You can just set it to the side. And we'll be coming into a twisted deer pose. And we'll still need the bolster back behind us, but we're going to be moving it once we kind of find our way into this shape. And so you can plant your feet nice and wide on the mat, as wide as the mat, and then taking your hands back behind you to provide some support. You could allow your knees to fall on over to the left, kind of just pausing for a moment, noticing how your hips feel. And then you might send the hips in the other direction. And then back toward the left. And then when your knees fall over to the left, you can go ahead and leave them there. And we're gonna press on up to a sitting shape and grab our bolster. And the bolster is gonna come kind of at a diagonal position. So our knees are over to the left, and we can kind of twist on over to the left to grab our bolster. And the bolster will be at a diagonal angle by our left hip. And so, a couple options. One, you can come into this shape the first time and see if your bolster is high enough for you. If it's not, we can grab a couple blankets to stack up higher. But I'll show you first with just the bolster so that you can see where we're kind of starting. And so, using your hands, you can place your hands on your bolster and really find some length through the spine. And the reason for that is that we want some space for our ribs, because if we don't, we might feel a little crunched, we might feel a little, maybe even some discomfort, depending on your body. So when we lift up through the spine and we twist on over toward the bolster, and then we can find our way down. And again, you might need to adjust. So like I just shifted my hip a little bit further away from the bolster because I noticed I was too close. So you can come on down, and then you might turn your head to one side. And then you could rest your hands on the floor, however it feels welcome to you. Now this is a very interesting twist. And so if you find that this is a bit higher up on the intensity level than what your body needs in this moment, another option is to take your blankets and stack them on top of your bolster. Create some height. So you might just start with one and then see how that goes. And then notice, okay, how does this feel? Does this feel a bit more supportive? Does this feel more accessible? And so you can decide for yourself, choosing where you want to be as we settle in to this twisted deer reclined pose for the next 8 rounds of breath. You might tune into your heart rate here. Just feeling your heart pounding in your chest, beating at an appropriate rate that your body sets for you. You might even feel or notice your heart rate slowing down the longer that you stay in this pose. As we start to finish out this pose and take the next side after this last breath. And so if you're ready to move on, you could press your hands into the earth, being mindful of moving with intention. And you could come back to center here with our feet as wide as the mat. And then you might even move your bolster and your blanket over to the right, just kind of preparing it. Your hands can come back behind you as your knees fall over to the right. And then we twist on over. Now, what you need on one side, considering props, might not be what you need on the other side. So feel your way into this just as you do every shape, coming into it like it's brand new, because it is. It's brand new to this side. As you settle in, once you find the right length and props for you, we'll be here for another 8 breaths. You might notice if your body is faster to settle in, sink in, grow heavy than it was at the beginning of class. About 2 or 3 more rounds of breath. And then when you feel complete in this pose, when you feel ready to press yourself out of it, you could use your hands to press away from the floor, taking your time. As we begin to move into our time of Shavasana. And you can take this final resting pose, Shavasana, in any way that you want. You could lie on your stomach, on your side, on your back. You could stay seated if you wanted to. And for today, I am going to offer a suggestion if you want to take it. And that would be to grab your blocks and place them at the highest level. And then take your bolster and place it right on top. And if you don't have blocks and a bolster, you could use anything next to you that is around the height of your knees when you're lying on the ground. So that could be a couch, a coffee table, it could be a bed, it could be a chair. We've done this supported Shavasana before, and this is just a different way and how you could do it. And then you could grab a blanket if you want it. And I really like this because it really tucks everything in. And then you could drape it over the bolster. I'm going to pause before I drape it just so that you can see what this shape could look like. And so you can drape the bottom half of your legs on this bolster and then settle in. And then if you want to place the blanket over you to hold your legs into place, you could drape the blanket and then kind of tuck it in like you're cocooning in, if you want to. You could kind of lift your legs up, scooch the blanket underneath, and then drape it back down on the bolsters or the chair or what have you, so that you can completely allow your legs to let go. All of the muscles in your legs are able to soften because the bolster and the blanket are there to support you. And so whether you are in this particular version of our Shavasana or not, it really doesn't matter, in the sense of how you want to rest is so deeply personal to you. And so if this is not how you want to rest today, please choose any other version that does suit you. As we settle in, finding some heaviness, finding some release. And we'll be here for the next 3 minutes. And I'll keep watch on the clock so that you can just completely let go. How sweet is it to do nothing? How sweet is it to rest? And I'll be quiet now until we're ready to move out of this shape. Beginning to bring some awareness into your body and where you're resting. You can choose to stay here for as long as you want. If this time of rest is continuing to serve you, please allow yourself to enjoy soaking up all of it, all of the goodness. And if you are ready to move out of this time of rest, you might begin to roll over to one side if you are on your back or your stomach. And then take your time pressing yourself up whenever you feel ready to. And I'll meet you in any seated shape. Option to bring your hands to heart center. And if you'd like, you could join me for one collective breath as we exhale all of our air out. And breathe in together. Thank you for joining me. my hope for you is that you feel safe, connected, and at home in your body. Thank you.